Aloha. Welcome to Data Transformations. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to transform data using array prototype methods. All right, cool. So actually, fill me in a little bit. I haven't seen your JavaScript education yet. This is my favorite topic. Let's call it top 3 in the curriculum to talk about. What specifically do y'all want out of this? Okay. We comfortable with variables, loops, ifs. Give me a sense of like what you know you can do, what you can do about half the time, and what is a complete mystery to you. Yeah.
So I think it's mostly where, at least what I found, is just transforming objects into arrays to iterate over them and all that stuff. Is there an easy way to do that?
Sure.
Whereas
Love it. So object to array. Great question. What else? Cheesy.
I feel like I don't know anything.
Okay. So we'll maybe do a little bit of JS basics.
Yeah. It was just too fast, and I'm still stuck on the mind.
Gotcha. All right, what else? Yeah.
I guess I'm just slightly confused on, I think, mainly syntax,
Okay.
for some of the numerables.
Syntax.
Or just why, I don't know, sometimes it feels like it works, but then you copy it and it doesn't work. So I think that's a syntax issue.
Okay. Beautiful. What else?
Working more with console.log.
Yeah, because we don't have bybug or binding.pry. We have debugger, which is similar, but console.log is kind of the equivalent go-to in gerbil script. What else? This is awesome. All right, let's start here. All right, so let's review a little bit of JS basics. Place. All right. So most of the stuff is exactly the same as it was in Ruby. Slightly different syntax sometimes. For example, we can't just do, say this is Ruby. I am having some kind of brain today. I have just been like throwing random letters into stuff all day. All right, so Ruby, I might do something like name equals Kyle. What is that in JavaScript? Let name equals Kyle or const name equals Kyle. Generally, we want to like default to const unless we specifically need to change something. There's a good reason for that. The TLDR on it is if you accidentally reassign something that you don't want to, let won't say anything. They'll go, cool, well, you made it so that you can reassign this, badass. Meanwhile, if you accidentally reassign something you do const, it'll go, not allowed. And if you go, no, that's cool, I actually want it to be able to do that, then you can make it a let. So it works well in that direction, not so well the other. But either one works, beautiful. So in Ruby, we had def, increment, amount, end. You had a method or something called increment that takes in an amount and ends. How do we do that in JavaScript? Function. So function instead of def. And then increment's the same. How do we do the thing I'm passing in? Parentheses. And then I don't do end. What do I do instead? Curlies. And also, I saw this in the survey comments. we have to return also. It doesn't automatically return something just because it's at the end. Heard somebody mention fat arrows. For our purposes, fat arrows and the function keyword are going to be interchangeable. How would I write this increment thing as a fat arrow? Nope, you can't have function. Also, you can technically name these functions, don't though. So what you're doing instead is you're taking the argument, you're making a fat arrow, and then you can either do parentheses or you can do an implicit return on those. So I'll show you an example. JS syntax. So all of these are the same. So I'll maybe make something up here. Initial value is 0. So I'll have an increment that returns, like I said, do I need to go to the doctor? What is happening? Ugh, that is worrying. Okay, so maybe I do something like that. I could also write that as something like const increment equals amount. That's the same thing. So is that. That's the same thing. I think there's another way I could write that. You can also put parentheses around this. You have to if there's more than one argument, but you don't if there's only one. Same. Just different syntaxes for the same thing.
What's it called again?
Fat arrow.
Fat arrow.
Fat arrow, because you use the equal sign, so it's a great big arrow. And the thing that sort of inspired this, which was called CoffeeScript, you also had something called a skinny arrow that looked like that. So that was a skinny arrow, that was a fat arrow. Skinny arrow didn't make it to JavaScript, so we just have fat arrows. Lots of different ways to write a function. And this is super important because when we do these data transformations, so much of what we do is playing around with functions. Next thing, when we did things like maps in Ruby, we would do something like sum array dot map, and then we would say like do item end. Okay, so that was how we did a map in Ruby. Same thing in JavaScript. First difference, underscore, that was kind of the standard way that you do things in Ruby. Camel case, lowercase, first letter, first word, everything else after that's uppercase. Camel casing. It's not different. It doesn't perform any kind of like special function. Ruby people all agreed on that. JavaScript people all agreed on that. And so you want to keep your stuff looking that way because all of JavaScript's built-in stuff looks that way. I'll make it look like it's the same part of the code base. So we do dot map, and then inside of that we take a function. So that might be something like item fat arrow whatever. All the different ways that we can write functions, we can use any one of them here. But they're basically the same thing. They even both returned the transformed array. What other JavaScript syntax things are we still maybe not all the way there on? How do I do an if in Ruby? If condition, and you can have an else in here, and then when it's over, end. Cool. So in gerbil script, do the same thing we just do with curlies. Coincidentally, you can also write your stuff in Ruby this way. No Rubyist does, but you can also put parentheses and curly braces and all that kind of stuff in Ruby. They're just optional. They're not in JavaScript. And no end. All the ends in Ruby, they just get replaced with curly braces in JavaScript. I like the curly braces a lot better. Cool. Other questions about JS syntax stuff? Anything else you're wrestling with? What was that? Say it one more time. Loop. Yeah. So in JavaScript, we have while loops. We have do while loops. We have while do loops. And we have for loops. And we have for in loops. And we have for of loops. I think these are all the essential like looping tools available in JavaScript. I think Ruby has while and for, and I think that's it. I have, outside of like an exercise or something, never written a naked loop in Ruby before. Ditto for JavaScript. I write whiles every once in a while for like performance things. But with map, filter, reduce, that kind of stuff, you kind of don't need those. So if you're not like 100% there on like your for loop syntax right now, kind of wouldn't worry about it. Probably have more pressing matters.
If it's an array.
So if it's an array,
No.
what?
If it's not an
array,
you should be doing that.
cool. So if it's not an array, we have better tools also. And this goes back to, I think, what Alexis is talking about. Turn it into an array. We actually do have a way that we can do like map, filter, reduce, all that kind of stuff on objects. So the tool called Lodash. There is no reason that anybody should be messing with this in mod 3, mod 2. Mod 3, maybe. So Lodash is a collection of utility methods. So it's things like flattening nested arrays so that they're just one array, or getting the first element of something, or if I take one array and a second array and I want the ones that are only the ones that are in both of them, that's called an intersection. You can write that out by hand. That's absolutely stupid. Like, this is a solved problem. Somebody else figured out a really efficient way to do this. And so that's in a method called intersection. And the coolest part about this library, I think for a lot of people, is it also has a version of map and filter and reduce that works on objects. It works the exact same way that it does in Ruby, where like you just get a pair of things each time that has the key and the value. But I would not worry about that for this mod. There is an answer to that problem, and it's this. But elsewise, we just turn objects into arrays and work with them that way. How do we turn objects into arrays? What was that? Sorta. Object values and an object. You use entries. Object.values and object.keys. So if I have an array, or have an object, some object, some key, some value. All right, and I need to iterate through that. I can do object.keys, some object. I can do object.values, some object. That's going to give me some key. That's going to give me some value. And then with those, we can map, filter, reduce, all that kind of stuff. Or object.entries will give you both. Cool. Talked a little bit about syntax, talked a little bit about turning objects into arrays, console.logging. So if I want to see any of these, let me just comment these out. I'll call that keys, call that values. If I want to take a peek at these, I can console log them. Some object, comma, keys, comma, values. You can put as many things as you want in a console log statement. And then if I run this, I get the object, an array with some key, and an array with some values. That's pretty much it. Other questions about syntaxy stuff before we start transforming some data?
I'm still confused with, like we had, like the players and the one, like fuzzy.
Accessing the nested stuff?
Yeah.
Cool. So let's talk about expressions and statements. So let's just talk about expressions. An expression is something that evaluates to something else. So, or really something that can be evaluated. That's an expression. Evaluates to 2. Coincidentally, that's an expression also. Evaluates to 1. So is a function call. If I had that other initial value in there, that evaluates to that. And so does some array mapping through something and passing in a function that doubles them. That evaluates to 0 to 4. So when we're trying to pull things out of some like crazy nested structure, usually what we're trying to do is write some expression that gives us a chunk that we want so that we can perform some operation on it. And usually part of the puzzle is figuring out how to pull out just that piece. But I mean, I've been doing this a very long time. I don't think of it all as one great big thing or try to solve all these nested problems. Make them smaller problems, solve those problems. Sometimes they even do it optimistically. It's like, all right, if I only had this little tiny piece at the end, that was the only piece of data they gave me, that'd be such an easier problem to solve. Okay, so I'll solve it that way. Now, what would I need to write so that I only got that piece? So you kind of solve the problem backwards. And we'll practice with that a little bit. Let's review our prototype methods. Map. Think to yourself for a second, what does map do? It's the same in JavaScript and Ruby, same in every language. What does map do? Think to yourself. Brave volunteer.
Huh. Iterates through a collection and transforms the entire collection.
Yep. So we'll say transforms. That's the most important part of this. Transforms every item. I would say another thing that is significant about this, same number in and out. If I'm mapping over 4 items, I get 4 items back, always. If I am iterating over 0 items, I get 0 items back. Same number in, same number out. And this is also true, and I think this might help your mental model. I was thinking about this morning. The items don't know about each other. They are completely independent. All right, so that's map. If I take a chicken and a potato and I map over them with cook, I get back fried chicken and french fries. They were transformed. I started with 2, I ended with 2, and the chicken doesn't need to know about the potato. No need for it to. That's mapping. Next one. Different color. Filter. This was select in Ruby. Filter does what? Think to yourself. Using this format, how would you describe it? Volunteer who is John. Yeah, Alexis.
It returns items based to satisfy condition.
Yep.
It is not the same number in out. Yeah.
So I'm finding any matches. How would we describe this? It's not the same,
Less.
potentially less. Potentially fewer, but it's not going to be more. Do the items need to know about each other? Nope. Cool. Reduce, the one that everybody's afraid of. think about what reduce does. Think to yourself, I'm going to call someone this time. Chuck, give it a shot. It's like everybody was like, "Who's gonna call me?"
Returns a result based on a collection given to it from a condition.
I like that. Result. In and out. Same, fewer, more.
One, just get a single result.
The atoms know about each other? Yes. Because we have this accumulator. This is keeping track of stuff. They don't have to know about each other, but they generally do. So, good example of reduce, sum. I'm just adding whatever the next item is, I'm adding it to this thing that I'm accumulating, like a sum. Now, where reduce gets wild is this one output doesn't have to be a number or a string or a Boolean. That can be anything. So it could also be another array, one array that has a lot of items in it. You can actually recreate map and filter and every one of these kinds of things with reduce. But regardless, it's some kind of accumulation. If it needs to know about more than one thing, it's probably reduce. Another good use case for reduce would be something like, do any things in this match? Well, you can start the accumulator as false. Then with each one, test to see if any one of them is true. When one of them is true, just keep returning it. Now you know if there was at least one match. But again, key idea there is these things do have a relationship between each other. Let me see if there's any others we need. Oh, find. Find's a good one. What's find do? Just shout it out. First match. Yep. One output. Matches condition. It's kind of like filter. Yeah, those are two sides of the same thing. Even if there's only one match, filter is always going to return an array. Find will always return the thing that you found. This can be an arbitrary number of things. This is always first match. Do the things know about each other? No. Cool. For each. Any guesses what we use for each for? We have these beautiful descriptive things, yet we still found occasion to use each every once in a while in Ruby. For each is the equivalent of each in JavaScript. Why would we ever use that?
To print all the things or return all the things?
Yep. Not return all the things. Just
Put in the console.
exactly. Output.
Yeah.
Strictly speaking, everything that falls into a big category called side effects, don't worry too much about that right now. For console logging, your console logging should be for each. Cool. Then we have this includes. Includes is a little bit different than these, but it kind of looks the same. Includes, I'll just tell you. will tell you if an array includes a match. It returns true or false. And the items, I'm going to say don't know about each other. So if I have an array 1, 2, 3, I can do that array 1, 2, 3 dot includes, and then I'll write it up. Oh, actually, includes doesn't even take a function. That's right. Something like that. I think. God, I'm getting mixed up now. You can do that in Lodash. Let me see if we can do it. Yeah. Simple methods, or simple values. Cool. So that might be really helpful with something like filter that's expecting things to return true and false. So we can use includes inside of like the function in a filter. Just about every single one of these has a really similar shape to it. It'll have some array dot whatever, map, filter, reduce, and you are going to pass a function into it. So some item and then you'll return something. Map looks this way, filter looks this way, find looks this way, for each looks this way. Exact same shape to every single one of them. The only one that's a little bit different is reduce, which is what makes people afraid of it. But it's not like it's a completely different look. Dot reduce. And this one looks like this. First argument to that function is the accumulator. Second one is some item. And then whatever we return becomes the accumulator the next time. So I have 1, 2, 3. You can also initialize it to something too. I can say like, I want to initialize it to 0 or false or an empty object or whatever. The first time through, this is 0. This is 1. I return 2. Cool. Now this is 2. This is 2. I add them together and it's 4. Okay, cool. This is 4. This is 3. I add them together, and then that's the end of the thing, and so the final output is 7. That's how a reduce works. Everything that we're going to do with this has this shape. Questions so far? All right, I'm going to slack something out. You guys done Beyonce yet?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Not big one.
Like you, what do you mean? You like arrayified it?
No, like we did it in Ruby.
Oh, okay, so you haven't done it in JavaScript.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, this is a little bit easier than Object Ball. So, You're all bits pleasers, correct? Yeah. All right, so this is Beyonce in Gerbil script. It works the exact same way. It's the exact same questions. And so I want you to give these first three a shot on your own. And let's take just a couple minutes for that, and then we'll go through it all together. But wrestle with it a bit on your own first. Go. By the way, I would describe a song as the object, not the title. My booty won't touch the floor. We can get close. All right. So, eyes up. If I want to just get all of Beyonce's hits and log them to the console, what do I do? Beyonce.hits. That's it. Same thing with the movies. You can also do it with brackets. So I can do it that way, or I can do it Beyonce.hits. Can you think of why I would do one over the other? I'd say .hits is probably a better choice in this situation, but there's a perfectly good use case for the brackets. Has to do that expressions thing I was talking about earlier.
Depending on how they define it in the array object above, if it's
Mm-hmm.
quotations to means and quotations.
Nope, not as fussy as Ruby is in that regard. Like Ruby makes a difference between strings and symbols.
Yeah.
Doesn't make a difference here. Also say that I single quote that. All three of these do the exact same thing. Why would I use the brackets over the dot? There's one really good use case. The thing inside the bracket can be any expression. So I can pass it a string, that's an expression. I can also give it a variable. I can also give it a function call. I can give it whatever. So that I can look something up if I don't know what it is already. Like imagine I write a function that's something like get Beyonce. It takes in a key and returns Beyonce key. Now I can do get Beyonce's hits, get Beyonce's movies. I can just call it with different things. If I do Beyonce dot key, what does that do? It is undefined because it's going to look up a key named key. If it's in the braces, I can be whatever I want. Good thing to be aware of. But all right, dot hits. I like it. The same thing on here with dot movies. And this relates too to the like making the problem solve smaller, because create an array with a list of all of Beyonce's hit songs. I have this complex data structure. All right. Well, Beyonce.hits just gets it down to the songs. Nicer. All right, and then create with a list of all of Beyonce's hit songs. I guess Beyonce.hits does that. Let's say I wanted their titles. How would I write that? Oh, what was that?
Oh, sorry, never mind. I thought you were talking about something else.
Tell me. Map over it? Love it. Why did you pick map?
Because we're going to be returning the same original question.
Yep, I'm just trying to get their titles. Awesome. So I map. Somebody else, what do I put in here to map over this? Oh, so I need to dot hits. Yep. So you could put song here. Be real careful about this. Every time you're using any one of these, if this is hits, make this hit. If this is songs, make this songs. You will save yourself so much like mental overhead if you just do plural, singular, plural, singular. Same thing in Ruby. I'm going to call that hit. Now what do I type? Fat arrow. Now what? Yeah, totally valid. So if I run this, cool, gives me an array of titles. If you want to do that with the other syntax, you could do it like this. Return hit.title. Does the same thing. If I didn't want to use fat arrows, function hit. Get rid of the arrow. Does the same thing. All different ways to write the same shit. That is beautifully concise, though. Questions about how this works, why this works? So one other syntax you'll see folks do plenty. You should also, like, this one might hurt a little bit. Bear with me. I'm going to call this get title, and it takes in a hit and returns hit.title. Weird. Isn't this like the exact same thing as this? Map is a function that takes in a function definition as an argument. I'm going to say that 3 more times. Map is a function. Got parentheses. The argument that it takes is not a string. It's not a Boolean. It's not like 2 strings. It's a function definition. Map is a function that takes in another function as this argument. Map is a function, and this thing inside of it is also a function. Okay. Weird. This is a function definition too. I wonder. Good gravy. You don't have to write the fucking things in line. That one's going to take a while to get used to. So if you don't write that at all in mod 2, I'm not sweating it. By mod 3, I'd like to see a little bit more of this. It'll clean up your code a lot. Big point I want to get across there. All this is a function definition. What was the equivalent idea in Ruby? They're not one for one the same, but they're pretty damn close. Those little functions that we pass into other functions. We had something just like it in Ruby. A what? Say it louder. Not helper methods, close. What did we pass into like map and stuff? Blocks. These functions that we pass into other functions, they're a lot like blocks in Ruby. That's the way that like Ruby sort of cheats to let you do things like map. That's not an object-oriented idea. That's a functional idea. And so Ruby like steals a little bit of the best from all worlds by giving you blocks. In JavaScript, we just use them like functions, which is cool because we can save them like functions and then reuse them. More questions about how this works, why this works?
Can we do one that's further down? It's like hard.
Want to do a really hard one? Which one?
I don't know.
Pick one.
Create an object with a property or movie name to the value of the object which contains the rating from the object.
Evil! Ah. Okay. So let's break this down. I want to create an object, so I know that I'm going to make some notes for myself. Output is going to be an object. Properties are movie names. The value is an object which contains that rating and the total movie's average rating. So next thing I'm going to do is sort of sketch out what that output might look like. So it's an object and movie name. So I'll say Dreamgirls. The value is an object which contains the rating and the total movie's average rating. I don't know if I like the phrasing on that, but all right. So rating is 7. All movies rating is 6.5 or whatever. And then other movies. All right, so our goal is something that looks like this. How do I make this problem smaller? I'll tell you right off the bat, I have no clue how I would just go and do this. But we can make it smaller.
I find the average rating, or like the total rating of all the movies.
Sure.
Anyway.
Awesome. So we know we're going to need that. We can get some wins under our belt. Love it. So I'm going to say const all movies rating. What is with me? Ugh, concerned. All right, so, and I'm going to need to reassign this at some point, so we'll call it let. All right, cool. So I'm going to do this by summing all of them and then like dividing that by its length. So we'll say like total rating is 0. And then I need all of the movies, so I can do that with Beyonce.movies. Beyonce.movies evaluates to this array. So if I have this array and I want all of the ratings out of it, like also as an array, how do I do that? What was that? Dot map. I love it. So I map over each of these movies and get their rating. Okay, so that gives me an array of ratings. So I'll say const ratings is that. Neat. Now I want to sum all of those ratings. That's going to be my total rating. And I can const that also, actually. So I'll say ratings dot what? How am I going to get all the ratings together? Reduce. Cool. So I'll initialize it to 0. First argument's fat arrow. It takes a sum and a rating. And it's going to return sum plus rating. So that should give me 100 or whatever all the ratings together are. So then I could say something like const ratings count equals what? I can do it even easier than that with some of the stuff I already have. Ratings dot not count length. You're not in Ruby anymore. All right. So ratings count is going to be ratings dot length. Awesome. And so I can say something like, well, I'll say average rating. Oh, we're about to get kicked out. All right, we'll go fast. Come in. Going fast. Say something like average rating is what? Total rating divided by ratings count. All right. Now that we've done this, we can clean it up a little bit too. So this was like the step-by-step on it, but super important thing to understand about programming in general, specifically JavaScript, is if ratings is just this, that means I can swap out ratings for that. Check this shit out. So I take this thing, which I'm saying is the same thing as ratings, all right? And then, pow! Now I can get rid of this. What's neat about this, reason you'll see JavaScript people do this all the time, is you get this nice little story of how this is being transformed. Okay, that gives me a total rating. And then a ratings count. If that's just ratings.length, how about I just swap that out? I will say that Ruby people fucking hate what I'm doing right now. This is like not a popular approach with Ruby people. They like it broken out step by step. But if I were writing this myself, I'd probably write it something like this. All right, so I have an average rating. Dope. That gives me this number. Now, what else? I would say, like, how about an object where each of the keys are the names of the movies? I'll take that. First, how about I get all the names of the movies? How do I do that? Movie titles. What do I do? Beyonce dot movies dot map. Cool. What goes in here? Movie dot title. All right. Cool. So I got a bunch of movie titles now. I want to turn them into an object where each of those things are keys that have an object as the value. How do I do that? Map is going to return an array, always. Yep. Basically, if you can't figure out like how it would fit into one of the other ones, it's probably a reduce. So I can movie titles dot reduce. What's the initial value going to be? Think carefully. Not an empty array. Close though. An empty object. Yeah, that's what this is going to be. So I can say, all right, we start with an empty object, have a function that fat arrows. So we'll call this movies object. I don't love that title, but whatever. And then this one's going to be movie title. All right, cool. So I have an empty object. What do I want to progressively turn movies object into? Okay, how? Think about that thing I talked about with square brackets earlier. What am I setting it equal to? Okay, so I can just make it an empty object. That's a start. Except one of the things that's going to end up being in this object is the like average rating. I have that already. So what do I put in here? We'll just call it average rating. And what's that equal to? Yep. Pro tip, anytime in JavaScript you see this, check this shit out. Pew! If the key and the value are the same thing, you only need to do one of them. That's new in JavaScript, by the way. Okay? And then we're going to return the movies object. And if I call this, let's come up with a name for it. I'm going to call this movies object. All right, let's see what happens if I log movies object right now. Yeep, ratings. Somebody didn't like that. Ooh, that's right. Because I'm not saving that anymore. I see. That was a good reason to keep that as a separate thing. That's fine. Watch this. Beyonce.movies.map. Movie. How you like me now? There we go.
You should do Beyonce that movie.
Oh, yeah. Good call. Cool. Austin Powers Gold member, average rating 6. Dreamgirls, average rating. Cool. That looks like most of the way there to what we're looking for. We also need that movie's rating. Lots of different ways we could do this, but I want to keep it in here. I have the movie title. What's a way that I could find that? I could, but the way that these are defined, like Dreamgirls isn't the key on an object or something, so the bracket notation is probably not going to help me. But I do have Dreamgirls. I have this string. Any other method come to mind? Might help? Includes? Maybe. Got an even better one than that. Find. If I do a find on this array, I get this object and this object and this object, and I can return the one where that object's title is my string, and then get its rating. All right. So I could do something like Beyonce.movies.find movie. I need something that returns truthy or falsy. Movie.title is the same as movie title. .rating. All right, moment of truth. Holy shit. Damn, that's smooth. There's more efficient ways we could have done that, but that'll get her done. Let's go back to prototype methods. Do I need to change everything? Do I want everything that matches? Do I need an accumulation, a result? Do we need the first thing that matches a condition? Do I want to know if something is included in something else? And then for each for like console logs. These 5 things, that's like 90% of your data transformation can be done with these 5 things. And even like most of the other like cool Lodash things, most of these are just also map, filter, reduce under the hood. They're just really common patterns you do with those. Yeah. Oh, and hey, here's another opportunity. So if movie titles is this, and that's movie titles, why not swap it out and say that's the map, that's the reduce, something like that. Questions? I would say, like, if there's a skill that I think makes you long-term employable as a programmer, this kind of shit, probably more than anything else, that's up there. Because it's hard, and when something's hard, it means that most people suck at it. So if you can get good at it, that's some employment safety. I'll show you one more thing before we break. In my last job, I did a ton of data transformations. So I worked on a calendar app for like doctor and nurse training. So an instructor would say, I have this availability, and then the rooms would have this availability, and the equipment would have this availability, and the students would have this availability. And you need to combine all of those availabilities together into like an options calendar. Like, I want to book a 2-hour meeting. Cool, when are all of those things available for 2 hours? That is like the real life example of those Beyonce problems. It's the exact same shit. And what that looks like in production 473091. Look at that, everybody's here in just a sec. Repos. This was. All right, this is a real life example of what this looks like and like big dollar, high performance production kind of stuff. And it's just one function after another with different kinds of maps and filters and reduces. Flatten's a reduce. Group by, that's a reduce. Map, reduce. This is the gnarliest code I've ever written in my career. And see, when you get down to the bottom, it's 262 lines. The code that it replaced was about 10,000. Map, filter, reduce, and also way fewer places for a bug to hide in this. Cool, that's all.